So the other day I was going through the garage and found my old childhood Nintendo 64 controller. And what memories I had. And then I saw just how loose and awful the stick was, and how there was 20 years of crud all over this thing. And I thought, you know, it's unusually satisfying. Just take one of these things apart and clean it. So why not make a video about that? You can just see how it's done. It's really not too hard. And then you'll know how to do it, and I'll have gotten a couple of bucks off of YouTube. I mean, you will both enjoy it together.
They become hard. They're hard for games. They become hard. They're hard for games.
So the first thing I usually do is I actually clean the cable first, because I usually find it's actually pretty disgusting. So one of the greatest cleaning substances in the world for video game related electronics is Windex, or Tony was too cheap and brought an off-brand. I'm sure that he's going to build a swimming pool with the 3 cents he saved. He's just being a jerk to him. Yeah, look at that already. Oh, yeah. It already feels like it's going through smoothly this time. Anybody who cleans these on a regular basis knows this trick. But all those little embossed areas, use a toothbrush and it'll clean them out. Like you just kind of wet it a little. Like that little triangle for the in. Oh, yeah. All right, now from here, if we really want to clean this, I recommend taking it apart. And for that, let's see what's the right size of screwdriver. That one for those. And then, just for annoyance's sake, there's 2 smaller ones in the save cartridge slot. Or is it the expansion slot? Can't remember what it was called. It's been a while.
Are those Phillips heads or are those tri-wing?
Oh, these are Phillips heads, actually.
So while you're doing that, tell us why you have a little cleaning rack underneath.
So I have this here. I usually do it because these screws love to roll off. And also, if the whole time I was talking, you just heard, it would be extremely annoying. Just constantly hearing the clattering and smacking. And honestly, I don't want to scrape any of it up, even though it's already honestly kind of scraped up because it was my childhood controller. Now there's a trick to putting them back in that I will show you when we're putting them back in. Ooh, I know, foreshadowing, teasing you for later. I'm like J.J. Abrams, except this video will actually finish and it'll go somewhere. So now you just kind of lift, and it comes right off. And let's move that aside and clean this part first, because there's always a bit of this, the crud. The controller crack crud, as I call it. And it's absolutely disgusting stuff, and I always hate when I see it on people's controllers. And man, I think some people refer to it as the controller cheese.
I was about to say, yeah.
I think I've heard Ian on the CU podcast refer to it as that. That is also another apt description to it, because it's just disgusting. Let's get those recessed holes.
John.
What was that golf game that sounded like a sexual maneuver?
I think there's 36 great holes with Fred Couples.
Yeah, 36 great holes for couples.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of dirt in that crack there. And I kind of want to clean up the Z button a bit. Oh, you know what? You can actually pop this through there, and then you can clean the sides of the Z button. And here's the thing I actually really like to do. This is a Bob Ross moment where I go, you just get in there and you clean the channel for the button. That's nice. It's nice. It's a happy little accident. All right, you clean around the sides there and it clicks back in. Do a little bit of cleaning. Most of the time, this little channel in here, you could probably just use a can of dust off or something like that, and you get it for the most part, because, I mean, most of its life, it's sat like this, so nothing's really collecting in there. Worst comes to worst, you clean the contacts. So now, we come to the more complicated parts. Now, big thing is, I want to remove this. This is the housing for the joystick. That joystick in there is garbage. Use the smaller screwdriver that you used for the save cartridge spot, and just take the 3 silver screws off. Now you're going to want to set those aside. Thankfully, they're a completely different color, so that's easy. So that black one that's on there is actually holding that housing together. So now, I'm just going to flex one of these little plastic pieces so that the Z button can swing free there, because you want to be very careful with that, because that is actually soldered in there, so that can actually break. It's the one part you really have to be careful of. Now I'm going to see, I sort of have kind of a spudgery thing on here, although I suspect I'm just going to have to do this with my fingernails. I'm going to just go ahead and see if we can't just use our thumbnail. A little bit of a crack in there. And we can just slide that out. Now this thing is basically junk now, so you just chuck that aside. This you're gonna want to take off. So we want to clean the contact and the carbon pad there. Just because, you know, it was used for 20 years. The build-up's in there. Might as well clean it while we got a chance. This could potentially be the most frustrating thing, this little zigzag here. So what I often do is I take my phone, I open the camera, and I just take a picture of it. Because by the time you get back to it, you're going to forget how it zigzagged through there, and it's going to annoy the hell out of you, because that plastic channel needs to be able to come down into here. But now that we know how that's done, we can just sort of worm it out of there, lift this up, and set it down.
It's a Super Nintendo controller.
On the inside, it is very similar, yeah. And then I'm actually going to take these pads off. You can actually just do this, and all of these will just fit. They will only fit in the correct way, so it's very easy to put those all back together. I mean, if you wanted to, you could, like, you know, soak those in warm water or something like that, but for now, I set them aside. I'm going to go ahead and move this electronics out of the way, and I'm going to go clean some cheese off there. Cheese cleaning. It's the stuff right there. Don't put too much force when you're brushing like this, because obviously it doesn't have the structure underneath it. You don't want to bend and break it. Oh, that's a lot of ammonia. I've already done a couple of these little channels, but you're just going to stick a Q-tip in there, rotate it around, maybe up and down a little bit. Just work it around like you have no idea what you're doing in there. That's what I always do. Ooh, that's a clean controller, they all say. Instead of, for God's sakes, go faster. Okay, so now we're going to clean these little contact pads, which I just wet a Q-tip with some isopropanol. And you can see these are coming off pretty clean. This was not nearly as beat up as my Super Nintendo controllers or my NES controllers back in the day. And you can see it's cleaning up pretty good. Now, I would recommend that you always try and get the highest percentage possible of isopropanol, usually like the 91%. I know some places, for no good reason, are selling lower percentages, but then you're just leaving water and other crud on here, and you don't want to do that. You want it to just clean, take the stuff off with the Q-tip, and then dry as quick as possible. Now, for the L and R button, you also kind of want to be careful with them because they're also held on the same way the Z button is. We're going to take off this cap. I'm going to wet the other side of this Q-tip. You want to get the pad. And you want to get in there, the little piece of carbon that's in there. Now, I know some people, if they're really having issues with it, they'll kind of push this through and take a piece of paper and drag it across it, and that's a way to kind of like resurface it if it's getting like overly grooved. But I was not having that issue yet, so I'm not going to do that. And you can complain all you want in the comments. You can tell me about how you hate my thumbs. All right. So now we're going to clean the other pads, and then all that's going to be left is cleaning up the little plastic bits because there's probably gunk on them. Now, if you're noticing that this rubber is getting stiff and having issues, just look online for like a Nintendo 64 membrane kit, and it would be all of these. They would be fresh new pieces with new pads in there. That should fix a lot of issues that you're having. I've had to do it to a Super Famicom controller that I had because the little edges in here were starting to dry rot and crack. And you hear a crunch when you're pressing the button. It's a good indicator. I mean, if it really hurts you that it isn't Nintendo original, well, here's the thing. They don't make that anymore. So I just finished cleaning all these, rubbing them down a little bit. You'll see there is a little bit of like chafing on there. There's some scratches, but honestly, you're really not going to notice it that much. If you are crazy and you want to buff them, sure, give it a try. But the nice thing about this controller is that you'll see that if I try and put the wrong button in, it won't go in until you have it the right way in the exact right socket. So you don't even have to look at it or remember anything. You can fumble completely through it, like someone who doesn't play the Nintendo 64 nearly as much as they should. And now that I have that in there, you take this, you just kind of carefully set it so that the rubber goes around those two little pieces there so that it's held in properly. You're going to do the same with the start button membrane. Now everything's pretty much held in place. You're going to take your controller. You're going to slowly lower it into place. Now there are little troughs that the L and R go into. You'll know that you did it wrong if you can pull on those buttons and feel them swing instead of click like they're supposed to. But you should be able to just do that, and it should be good. All right, and I think you can figure out from here where L and R go. You want the long, like, peg down. You're gonna just kind of pop it in there. Okay, so I now see that this goes in like that, and up and around. Push that down in, push that down in. There we are, because I remembered to take a picture there, so I know what it looks like. Oh, goodness. I forgot to clear 2 channels.
How much does that cost?
This one was, what is it, $11.95, $12.95, $13. Lucky number 13. This one from Repair Box, the quote-unquote optical style, just happens to be my favorite. I feel it has just the right feel. It has like no dead zone whatsoever, and I just really, really like it. The only thing that's confusing is if you have to take it out again, instead of the black screw, it's now a silver screw, but just remember, don't open that one. The average person does not care the difference in quality between this and the slight step down.
Yeah.
It's just I do.
Oh, okay. What does the slight step down cost?
I think it's like $7.95 or something like that. So it's pretty reasonable.
Because I was going to say, like, why would anyone replace their joystick when they could just buy a functioning controller? But that's sort of more your luxury.
Yeah,
joystick.
if you were buying a controller at like $10, chances are it's got a bad stick. It's going to be like the disgusting one I showed you earlier. Okay, so here's where I get to talk about how to avoid cross-threading for the longevity of your plastics. See, my first job was actually testing threading and extrusions on metal parts. So what you do is you set it in there and you actually go the backwards way. And then you'll hear this little...
I already heard the click. You got it.
No. See, I went past. Oh, there it was. I was trying to hope that I could get the... You'll hear a little, and then we could actually have the click there. But then Tony spoke over it. Huh? There it is.
The one piece of advice my father ever gave me was go left first, find the thread, and then go right.
Yeah.
Rather, counterclockwise and clockwise. And to this day, if I'm using a screwdriver in front of people will be like, righty-tighty. And it's like, I know. I'm finding the damn thread so I don't strip this, like, the hole. I don't strip everything.
Yeah, you don't want the threading to get all ripped out.
That's what I was looking for.
There we are. So you just kind of clip that back in there. Now the Z button's in. Now this can occasionally be annoying plugging the joystick back in, but it's not the world's hardest job. I would recommend you do this while hard, though. Grab these two tabs and you wiggle it in, and they're just about in. And then I would just kind of push that like so. Your cable isn't really on anything like that. And then we're pretty much done now. We just need to put the L and R buttons back into their little spots, which can actually be easily the most fiddly and irritating part of this entire process. And now we just carefully set this back on and see if everything's fitting correctly. It can be slightly annoying. No. Ah, just as I thought. This is in the way. So let's push these cables like that over there on the other side of that thingamajig that I do not actually know the technical name of.
Thingamapug.
Yeah, this thingamapug. So you want it a bit more like that. And then as you set it back down in.
There you go.
Oh, look at that. It's in there good. Okay, now we repeat the same process of left first, wait till you hear a click. And the most important thing, because you're with plastic, and I've probably said the most important thing 20 times in this video, but when you get it in there, get it down till it's like firm, but it's not a strength competition, because if you over tighten it, you're also just going to screw it up. Yeah, so like a little bit of resistance there, that's good. So now you'll see the Nintendo logo's nice and clean, all your buttons look clean and shiny. You'll notice all the cracks and crevices are nice and clean, and the most important part, you don't see like a wobble anymore as I go back and forth. It's a nice, clean controller. And now your stick is ready to go. You've got a nice clean controller. When your friend wants to plug it in, he doesn't get his hand all covered in junk. And it looks nice. It should be good. And what I usually do after doing this is I take this, and you kind of, as you flip it out, you roll it, and you roll it. And oh yeah. You can have a nice, clean controller for friends. And you know what good friends do? They like this video, they comment, they subscribe. They give us money they probably shouldn't on Patreon. And, they just give us money for really no reason. Just feed into the corporate machine. And there you go. Isn't that nice? Pretty controller. Just go ahead. Smash that like button. Subscribe. Create a fake account. Subscribe with that one. Create 100 fake accounts. Will be the new T-series. It'll be a whole bunch of strange people wanting the next Zelda Beta Quest.
They're hard